This Civic Media podcast is sponsored by UW Organ and Tissue Donation. Organ donations are desperately needed, and now is the right time to become an organ donor. Talk to your family. Get the dot. Save lives. Go to heroicdeed.com.
This is your WXCO Daily News Roundup for Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 FM and 1230 AM in Wausau.
For WXCO News, I'm Brittany Merlot. Wisconsin has been a popular place lately, especially for visiting politicians. Minnesota First Lady Gwen Walz stopped in Wausau on Saturday to thank volunteers for their work and to persuade and turn out voters in the final stretch of the campaign. She talked with around 40 people at the Harris Walz Coordinated Campaign Field Office in Wausau, saying, "It may sound a little cheesy, but this state is starting to feel like home. But everywhere I go, people are fed up with Donald Trump and fired up for a new way forward." Governor Tim Walz and Mrs. Gwen Walz will tour the state again today before heading to Michigan. And the U.S. Department of Justice announced Friday that federal officials will be monitoring the polls in 4 Wisconsin towns and cities, including Milwaukee, Thornapple, Lawrence, and Wausau. Of course, after Mayor Doug Dinney met some controversy when he decided to remove the ballot box. Thornapple and Lawrence have had trouble providing voting machines accessible to people with disabilities. And Milwaukee, being Wisconsin's largest city, has been the target of false voter fraud claims in the past. There will be Civil Rights Division staffers available on Election Day to take questions and complaints from voters related to any possible violations of federal voting rights laws. And Wisconsin's voter ID can be a nightmare for college students. Students can use their student ID if it's compliant with state rules, and most aren't. On some campuses, students need to request a special ID that includes their photo, legal name, signature, issuing date, and expiration date. Kristen Hansen with the Common Cause in Wisconsin works with college students to help them vote.
If we're going to have a voter ID law, and the purpose of the law is to identify a person's name, who they are, match their photo to their name, then I don't see why it has to be a limited number of IDs that are acceptable.
She says another challenge for students is providing proof of residency, as some can change addresses every year they're enrolled.
This is one of the things that is a mystery, is a school already knows the student is who they say they are. They've already provided identification to the school. And so the ID that the school gives should be enough without all this other nonsense attached to it.
Molly Ford is a senior at UW-Madison. She's an out-of-state student. And 2 years ago, she voted in the Wisconsin general election. And she almost missed one of her finals when she was trying to vote because she had to go back to her dorm for different documents after already standing in line.
My friend that was in the class was like, "You're crazy. I would have just not done that." And I was like, well, it was important to me to vote in this election.
For students who need help figuring out how to vote, we have a story on our homepage. Just head to civicmedia.us. Minnesota Governor and Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz will be in Stevens Point today to rally supporters. Walz, along with his wife Gwen Walz, will be stopping in several Wisconsin cities to encourage people to get out and vote. Starting their day in La Crosse, they'll head to Point this afternoon from 1 to 5 p.m. before heading off to Milwaukee. And do not wear that MAGA hat or Kamala shirt to the polls when you go vote. Lisa Hale has the story.
When people are passionate about their candidate, they tend to wear that passion via garb, a t-shirt, a hat, and or campaign buttons. Megan Wolf, the chief elections official in Wisconsin.
That is prohibited under Wisconsin law. So you should not be coming in wearing apparel or displays that advocate for a position or a candidate on the ballot.
Wolf says any display of support for a candidate or for a position on the ballot is considered electioneering and is not allowed at the polls.
And a Marathon County man will spend 3 years in federal prison for possessing a firearm as a felon. 50-year-old Sean Hignite of Weston pled guilty to this charge on August 1st. The arrest happened in January after police responded to a domestic incident involving a gunshot. Hignite said there wasn't any gunshot. Police searched the home after obtaining a search warrant, and they found a loaded handgun inside of the house and a spent shell casing in the backyard. Hignite later admitted that the gun belonged to him and he fired it that night. During the sentencing, the judge pointed to Hignite's dismal history of consuming alcohol and committing crimes. After 3 years in federal prison, Hignite will have 3 years of supervised release. And gas prices have fallen nearly 3 cents per gallon over the past week. The average across the state today is $2.84. Officials at Gas Buddy say no matter who wins the election, gas prices are likely to stay much lower than in previous years with the surge from COVID and Russia's war on Ukraine. The Rhinelander Fire Department is grieving after the sudden loss of one of their foundational members. Assistant Chief Dan Bauer died on Saturday after a massive heart attack. He was described as the heartbeat of the Rhinelander Fire Department and will be sorely missed. Dan Bauer leaves his wife Jenna and their 4 children. The department will release arrangements and a family benefit in the near future. And Megan Wolf told reporters in a virtual press call on Friday that inaccurate information has been distributed about non-citizen voting in the state.
Let me be clear, under no circumstances are non-citizens allowed to vote in the state of Wisconsin, ever. In order to vote in Wisconsin, voters must certify on their voter registration form that they are a U.S. citizen.
Every Wisconsin voter has to show an ID, such as a driver's license, passport, military ID, or naturalization documents at the polls to prove legal status and vote. And you may see or hear F-35 aircraft flying overhead this week. The 115th Fighter Wing of Wisconsin Air National Guard will be conducting evening training flights today through Thursday. Pilots and maintenance personnel need to conduct nighttime operations as a part of their overall readiness. I'm Brittany Merlot for WXCO.
The Packers lose to Detroit. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Packers had an early field goal, then trailed the rest of the night, losing 24-14 to the Lions at Lambeau Field. Dropped passes and penalties killed the Packers. Running back Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, man, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, a lot of momentum killers. You know, we've been getting away with a lot of it because we've been kind of masking it with the wins. But when you play a good team, man, you know, all the little things catch up to you.
The Packers now head into their bye week at 6-3 in third place behind Detroit and Minnesota in the NFC North Division. NBA, Bucks and the Cavaliers in Cleveland tonight. Bucks forward Bobby Portis says his home was broken into during Saturday night's game in Milwaukee and says several personal items were stolen. Baseball, the Brewers with 2 players winning Gold Glove awards for the first time since 1979. Second baseman Bryce Terang and outfielder Sal Frelick.
It's definitely cool. A little surreal still, and I think even cooler to do it, with Bryce.
That's Sal Frelick with Sports. I'm Mike Clemens.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. Rapper Young Thug was sentenced to 40 years in prison for gun and drug charges. Despite this news, the incredibly successful rapper, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams, will be released from prison and given credit for time served. The judge set all kinds of contingencies and strict parameters in regard to the sentence. With a name like Young Thug, he is asking to be a suspect in any crime. Maybe legally change your name to something a little less crime-friendly. Young Weeblo Scout or Young Member of Up With People. I'm spitballing here. This year's World Series went yard in the ratings, which is not a huge surprise considering the teams represented the 2 biggest markets in America. Yahoo Entertainment reports that more people watched the Los Angeles Dodgers defeat the New York Yankees in 5 games than any previous World Series dating back to 2017. This was the first year they put pitchers on a clock to speed up the game, but despite that, the season did not end any sooner. There have been many lifelong Republicans who are jumping ship and endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Arnold Schwarzenegger is continuing the trend in Hollywood. On the platform formerly known as Twitter, the former California governor said he is an American before he is a Republican and therefore will vote Harris. This is not a huge shock as Arnold has always surprised people politically and as an actor. What I find most surprising is that Schwarzenegger's Austrian accent hasn't gotten any less thick in 50 years. Game of Thrones might be coming to the big screen. Series creators say it was always their intention to end the iconic TV show with 3 feature films instead of the finale HBO went with. The Hollywood Reporter says Warner Brothers has a project in the works, but it is in the very early stages and no one is attached at the moment. GOT fans might want to check out House of the Dragon, which HBO rolled out in 2022, and an upcoming prequel series, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which should drop in 2025. From the little screen to the big screen, John Krasinski is keeping the role of Jack Ryan. Krasinski played Ryan for 4 seasons on the Amazon Prime series Jack Ryan. The Hollywood Reporter says he will now move to the big screen, where he will be the 5th actor to play the character over the last 35 years. Previous Ryans include Alec Baldwin, Harrison Ford, Ben Affleck, and Chris Pine. There is no word yet on which Tom Clancy novel the next film will be based on. Joining Krasinski in the cast will be Wendell Pierce as James Greer and Mike Kelly as Mike November, both men also reprising their roles from the Prime series. Wicked opens November 15th in theaters, and the early buzz from critics, they're raving about it. One critic for Variety called it a masterpiece. Pop star Ariana Grande plays the lead role of Glinda. If you hear a murmuring across the country, It's Oscar buzz. This is part 1 of the film. Part 2 will hit theaters in 2025. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
It is going to be cloudy with scattered showers likely today. Our high 64 this afternoon. Showers again tonight with a low in the upper 40s. Tomorrow cloudy. Rain likely could be a half inch or more with a high tomorrow in the mid 50s. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Outside now it's 55.
That's your WXCO Daily News Roundup from Civic Media. Subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Find more news at bullfallsradio.com. The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.